Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, it's me Gamerturk, and now that Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet's second DLC, Betrayal of Comrades, has been released earlier this week, and I got a chance to finish it completely as well as explore the things it has to offer, I can share my impressions with you. There are a bunch of things introduced to the game under the DLC2 banner. Obviously, the DLC2 campaign is the main treat, along with the one dungeon that the DLC takes place in, Clarence and Shirley being introduced, as well as the brand new villain character, Lievre. In addition, the home expansion quest was introduced as part of the second DLC, which unlocks a BGM and voice line playback featured in your new home, an accessory enhancement system, and a bunch of quests from the individual characters. Since that was pretty much the overview, let's go one by one. As I mentioned, similar to the DLC1 Ambush of the Imposters, Betrayal of Comrades comes with the addition of a single dungeon and two boss pairs, one of which is just a harder version of the initial one. The entire DLC2 story takes place in this new dungeon called the Demon Cave. The campaign is, once again, pretty short. If you skip the cutscenes, you can breeze through the entire dungeon in 20 minutes in your first playthrough. Without skipping and, actually experiencing the campaign though, it's around an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I'm saying experiencing the story, but honestly there is not much of substance to experience here, unlike DLC1. Now, I really enjoyed DLC1 because it gave us an insight as to what Kura and Itsuki as well as Zeliska were like in their early days of GGO before we met them as who they are right now. DLC2, however, reminds me a lot of Hollow Realization's first DLC story. The story is just barren. The entire campaign is all about reaching the final area and defeating a boss, which ends with the reveal of the blatantly obvious that the innocent ArFA-Copies Lievre is indeed the villain behind all the other copies. Needless to say, much like Yamikaze, Dine and Musketeer X in DLC1, Clarence and Shirley serve no purpose in this DLC as well, aside from, having a cutscene attached to them as an introduction. Towards the end of the DLC, the developers tried to be a little bit more creative to extend the runtime by making you explore Solitary Sands area to find 5 teleporter codes, which I wouldn't have minded if it was done properly, but the fact that the DLC says codes are in Solitary Sands, instead of giving you proper hints, is a terrible way of executing this idea. Aimlessly running around for 20 minutes to stumble upon certain chests is not a fun activity, it is a chore. If there was proper descriptive location information, like there is with pretty much every hunting quest in the game, telling you that you'll find what you're looking for, let's say, around the worm's nest, this would have been a neat side exploration quest. Sadly, that wasn't the case here. As for the final bosses, the Samurai Brothers, they are a really cool concept, I'll give them that, but they are also exactly what I was afraid they would be. Unlike the Elemental Wizard, which in my opinion is still the best boss battle in the game with proper mechanics, a risk and reward crit system, and a boss that acts systematically that you can adapt rather than bringing down Satan's wrath on you in a single minute. The Hakai brothers, the samurai guys, much like every other boss in the game, are all about rushing you and spamming barely dodgeable skills over and over with no tactic or skill involved. Either you kill them first, or they kill you first, which is a quite bad approach you can have for these types of bosses. And there are also a bunch of character duels that are not all that impressive. It's mostly run and gun. It's no different than what you usually do in the game with regular monsters or enemies. Meanwhile, the entire DLC is solely focused on you, ArFA-Copies and Kureha, while an integral part of the previous DLC, Itsuki, is absolutely nowhere to be seen. Kirito and Asuna only have a cameo as they speak with you for like 7 or 8 sentences before leaving, and Zeliska, who is probably back in Zaskar trying to make sense of the situation, so she's not here either. I'm not even mentioning Basalt Joe since he was even forgotten back in the main game. Like, come on, put some more characters in there and give us an actual story. On the bright side of things, the game offers a tiny bit more things to do post-campaign than what DLC 1 did, but sadly, none of them actually feel satisfying here. The entire game already felt like it's been built on do this, collect that mentality without even making it subtle or properly meaningful. So when the DLC offers more character quests that don't offer cool stories, let alone the amazing gallery images we got back in Hollow Realization's heroine quests, it just falls flat. It turns into doing quests for the sake of doing quests, which is the deadliest mistake a game can make in my opinion. The shining grace of these otherwise meaningless quests is that you unlock a BGM playback, a voice line playback, and an accessory enhancement function in your brand new home. They are appreciated, I'll say that much. They are really appreciated, but it's honestly confusing that the BGM playback only includes the base game music and nothing from both DLCs that have been released so far. As for accessory enhancement, if you are expecting something similar to weapon enhancements and thus were storing tons of equips to use as fodder material, you'll be slightly disappointed. While the accessory upgrade is very well implemented with requiring materials to upgrade the effectiveness of a perk by a certain amount, the transformation is just outright transmogrification rather than the transform mechanic you know from the weapons. You can't unlock perks and switch them individually between things. You either switch the entire perk set of 2 accessories or you just let them be, which really brings down the utility of such a function, making it a purely cosmetic gimmick. But hey, that's pretty much it. All in all, while this DLC offers more to do than the first one, I still prefer the first one in terms of meaningful content, both story-wise and boss mechanic-wise. With more stuff being included this time around, it's even more baffling that the proper care was just not there once again. No new voice lines for those post-campaign quests by other characters, newly introduced characters are once again just there for the sake of being there, just for fan service. Extremely isolated story that is about 80% fluff, resulting in an obvious reveal that everybody saw coming. At this point, I feel like the episodic release formula is just doing a giant disservice to the DLC content in general for Fatal Bullet. If this was bundled with DLC1 and possibly what DLC3 may have to offer in November, we would have a decently sized expansion that wouldn't have felt so isolated from each other. The story structure just does not flow well at this point, and without any resolve at the end of each chapter, only being presented with more cliffhangers, it is honestly just frustrating. While I wouldn't say the DLC is worth the $10, it's not really the DLC's fault at this point. It's obvious that it is the release structure resulting in such an incoherent, isolated mess that doesn't satisfy anyone. And with that, without experiencing DLC 3, I can safely say, wait for all 3 DLC episodes to be released before getting them all or the season pass. Individual DLC endings have only been frustrating so far, with constantly posing more questions than actually resolving open questions that the game is yet to answer. If you really love the game, go grab it now. It is more Fatal Bullet for you to play through. But otherwise, I strongly recommend waiting for November, when they will probably release DLC 3 and come back to the game then. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed playing through the new dungeon, mainly because I enjoy the arcadey shooter mechanics this game has, but the story still wasn't satisfying. I really do hope, with the time they have until DLC 3, they really bake something decent. It doesn't need to be larger, the size of the DLC honestly is not the issue here. I really enjoyed my time in Hollow Realization DLCs, not because they introduced gigantic maps that required me to grind through. I enjoyed them because the stories they conveyed were passionate, especially the heroine missions. I loved getting those amazing gallery images, as well as experiencing the premise of those missions, giving us more personal time with these colorful characters expanding upon their personality. No matter how big Accel World vs SAO DLC was with the inclusion of Endless Dungeon, I absolutely hated it because it introduced all that repetitive time sink for damn short dialogues with Alice, Yu-Gi-Oh and Oberon. It was all meaningless content that just said, hey, look, these characters are here, without actually doing anything interesting with said characters, unlike the amazing Alice and Yu-Gi-Oh quests of Hollow Realization DLC 3. The problem with Fatal Bullet DLC so far have been that they are short, and they don't offer anything of substance, and that is a big issue. Give me a passionate story that makes me care about what is happening. Give me intimate character moments, exploring who these characters are or can be in the future. Utilize the gallery images that you have neglected most of the time in the main game and neglected completely in the DLCs. What makes Sword Art Online into Sword Art Online are the characters themselves. Make sure those characters shine properly on the screen rather than spouting boring exposition or showing up as meaningless cameos. In the next Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet DLC, give me more of Sword Art Online, not more content to go through. That is all I have to say about this DLC and Fatal Bullet in general for now until DLC 3 comes around. Thank you for watching. Do hit that like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed the video or found it helpful. Huge thanks to Candle and Tiffany for supporting me on patreon.com/Gamerturk, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with some Sword Art Online Season 3 Alicization news. Take care.